evening, everyone, and welcome to Back to Sargent's Town Hall. I am Kelly Pesanelli, the president of the Sargent College Alumni Association. I'm a triple terrier. I completed the College of General Studies program in 1994, and then 2 degrees at Sargent in 96 and 98, ultimately a graduate of our physical therapy program. I want to take a minute tonight as you are with us to let you know that you are in my thoughts, and as we are together, that you and your loved ones are as well as can be expected during this pandemic. We think about you every day and hope that you're well. It is now my honor to introduce you to our Dean, Chris Moore, who, as you know, joined us in 2014. As I prepared tonight's remarks, I had to think about, okay, what highlights do I want to share with you about Dean Moore? And honestly, I could probably talk all night, not only as an alum, but also as a fellow faculty member, a senior lecturer in our health sciences department. Dean Moore, since he joined us in 2014, has nearly doubled the size of our PhD programs. He's raised close to $30 million in gift support. He's implemented and supported numerous initiatives around diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's increased our Sargent student body size to almost 1,200 undergraduates and more than 600 graduate students, while increasing the credentials and the diversity of our community. He's grown the faculty to nearly 100 full-time faculty members, with a significant increase in the diversity of our Sargent faculty. We now have almost $18 million in externally funded research. And also importantly, during this time, I thought it was important to highlight something recent Dean Moore has done, which is the creation of our Sargent Cares Fund, which is a fund our Dean developed to help our students who may be struggling financially right now during this pandemic, so we can help in some way to bring them back to campus, help them to continue their undergraduate or graduate education by supporting them in a financial way to make that possible for them. Dean Moore, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for having me, and thank you to all of you that are joining in on this. You know, it was interesting hearing you do that introduction, because every one of those accomplishments, as proud as I am of those things, every single one of those things depends so heavily on other people. Those are all other people's accomplishments, really. I mean, those are all, I did not bring in $18 million in research funding. That's our faculty did that. The diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's a full team effort. The PhD students are going into our faculty labs. I mean, I'm very, very proud of Sargent College's accomplishments in that way. And certainly those are not things that I did.
But it's under your leadership that happens.
I am very proud to lead the team, through those efforts, and I am 1,000% supportive and right at the front of the line in making those things happen. But before we talk, I think we should be setting a good example, showing that we are allowed to be here.
I am not.
Okay, so I'm on campus today. I'm cleared to be on campus. I trust that backdrop behind you is fake.
That backdrop is a picture of 101, which is my happy place at Sargent.
Okay.
So as you can see, you're either cleared or not cleared to be on campus. So Dean Moore, I'm happy that you're able to be on campus today.
I'm healthy, I'm tested, I've done my health attestation, no HIPAA violation in sharing that information.
Great. So I think this is a nice transition into Learn from Anywhere, or as some of us have heard, the acronym LFA. What is LFA? What does it mean to learn from anywhere? So
I want to take a little bit of time on this. This is one of the things that has really made me most proud to be part of the BU team. Everyone was presented with the same challenge at the same time last spring, winter. And universities have had exactly the same amount of time to react. We have pretty much the same mission that we're all trying to meet. And so the variety and the way different universities have responded to the challenge of COVID-19 has been really amazing, remarkable. And the way that Boston University has responded just makes me incredibly proud. Every one of our students that is on campus is tested twice a week. Our residential students are tested twice a week. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Our faculty and staff are all tested, most of them once a week. So we are, creating like a bubble, but of course a completely porous bubble because we're in the world. We're an open university. We invite and thrive on the interactions with the world. So we can't create a non-permeable bubble. And so this surveillance testing goes on with every single member of the campus community being tested very frequently, ensuring that we can continue our mission without interruption. So that's been an amazing experience. The complication of that, or the complexity of that, is how do you guarantee that your students can continue to make progress, their planned progress toward their degree in the way that they're most comfortable? So we have students who are learning clinical skills. We have students who are doing normal classroom lecture-based instruction. We have laboratory instruction, as I said, clinic-based instruction, external clinic instruction. So all of these things are going on at the same time, and they all require different kinds of approaches. So the approach that Boston University has settled on, we've called Learn from Anywhere. And the important part of it is that the control, that is the control in terms of what the format of the learning environment is, rests with the student. So if the student wants to learn from the classroom, wants to be part of the classroom experience, classroom exchanges with the faculty member, with peers in the classroom, that's their option. If they are more comfortable learning from a remote location, either outside Boston or just from their residence hall room, or maybe their apartment in Allston or something like that, then that's also their option. So trying to accommodate everyone's preferences. You can imagine, actually, this is where I want to interview you, Kelly, being a professor. I mean, what is it like? Because the burden of Learn from Anywhere, from the first moment I heard about this plan, I recognized that all of the flexibility resting with the students means that the entire burden for this approach, which is like teaching, well, I've heard it expressed several different ways, teaching 3 classes at once. I've also heard it talked about as building a submarine or building an airliner while you're flying it, while you're operating it. So I wonder if you would tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a professor in this very complex environment.
Absolutely. So the university was extremely supportive of faculty returning back to campus. I think one of the things that went well is that we became more knowledgeable about Zoom than we ever thought humanly possible when we turned to all remote instruction back in March. So the faculty really had the ability to be able to perfect their ability to teach over Zoom, so that when we went back into the classroom, we were mindful about, some students would choose to come back into the classroom and some students would choose to learn from anywhere. I have students learning from anywhere now in Taiwan. I have a student in India. I have a student in Anchorage, Alaska. They're truly all over the world. So the university looked at our class size, and based on our class size, they provided us with the largest classroom possible and did an amazing job with setting it up with arrows so that students walked in one way, out another way, blocked off seats so that everybody maintained social distance. So I've been teaching, most of you know Morse 101. I've been teaching Tuesday, Thursday morning in Morse 101, and students come in, they're socially distanced, everybody has on a mask. The students have been fantastic. They know not to approach faculty live in the classroom with any questions afterward. The university has hired moderators for us to help to monitor the chat and questions for students that are learning from anywhere. And it really, I couldn't have imagined it going any better than it actually is. And the feedback from the students has been the same, which is great to hear. And interesting to hear, I know personally how I have received my feedback from the students. Have you heard any feedback from students or from families?
Um, yeah, although I have to say, you know, what the dean usually hears about isn't always the most positive. No doubt there have been bumps. I mean, the amount of technology, just the logistics involved, reassigning hundreds of classrooms, you know, trying to de-densify residence halls, de-densify classrooms. That classroom behind you, which normally holds 200 students, now only holds 33 students. I mean, that is a very, very big logistical problem. Never mind just the spatial problem, but how you manage, you know, that kind of scheduling is really hard. So, yeah, there have been some complications, no doubt about it. But I have heard far more, you know, success stories, remarkable stories of how people actually do understand, appreciate, and recognize, you know, the faculty and certainly the staff effort that has gone into, you know, making this operation go.
Yes, and it's Sargent. We function as a team, and a lot of these behind the scenes challenges I was aware of, but it didn't affect my ability to be able to teach. So I think as a faculty and an alumni member, you know, if faculty are able to teach in ways that they're comfortable with, that's going to translate into even greater excellence in terms of teaching and education. So thank you for weathering those challenges with us and for us. But now we need to think about what interests me too is research. So back in March, when you were notified that the Charles River campus was going to close, what happened to research operations and how did you manage that in terms of notifying individuals that they weren't going to be able to come to campus?
Yeah, so, you know, there have been, I sort of view this as there have been sort of three major phases, I think, that we've already been through with this, and who knows how many more phases there will be. But the immediate response, because, you know, back in February, and actually March 5th is the day I sort of mark in my mind, where, you know, all the lights were flashing red on March 5th. And we were actually preparing at Sargent. We had been preparing for many months. We had been preparing from my experience in government. I used to work at NIH and Veterans Affairs, as you said. And my experience in government really reinforced the understanding in me that we had to have a contingency plan for a whole variety of contingencies. Most of them, in my mind, were weather related. So, you know, a 60-inch snowstorm or a hurricane or you know, electrical outages or things like that, I mean, that we would respond to as a college, where we would need to keep our operations going from home. And we had planned for quite some time to be able to maintain our operations by working remotely. And when we saw the pandemic coming, we sort of moved that up a little bit. And then one Friday we had it was a all hands exercise where we all worked from home on that day, on that Friday. And as it turned out, we didn't come back from that. So that meant our research operations, our administrative operations, people had been planning, and just, you know, there was some serendipity and some just, you know, we were at that point and we just accelerated a little bit. But it meant there was a very abrupt halt in many operations, mostly on-campus research operations, which just, we didn't know what we were dealing with. and we were extremely cautious and careful about every aspect of what COVID-19 might mean to our faculty, staff, and students. So that was phase one, was just complete remote operations. We even by the middle of May, we were ramping research operations back up, trying to arrange how to get research operations on campus going again, and reestablish research operations. There were many setbacks, of course, lost samples that had to be maintained by live people in the lab, lost animals, lab animals, some very, very tough consequences. A lot of the work that is done at Sargent involves human participants, human volunteers. Of course, we couldn't do that. So a lot of our research was interrupted. And so phase two has been reestablishing under the former Dean of Sargent, Gloria Waters, under her guidance, the university, she's now Vice President of Research. We have been ramping back up and reestablishing research operations. It takes a lot longer to get ramped back up in this environment than it took to shut down. And so we are operational in many, many ways now. Bringing in human subjects is still continuing to be a challenge because it's hard to do that without there being some risk. And managing the risk-benefit ratio for participants so that the risk is always outweighs or the benefit always outweighs the risk is a challenge in this environment. But that's the phase we're in now, is sort of normalizing our research in human participants. It's very hard, but we're getting there and we're committed to it. We have, as you said, $18 million worth of externally funded research that we have to keep going. It's important research, it's pain management, it is everything you can imagine related to people's participation, and trying to maintain that level of contribution to the knowledge base, to new knowledge and dissemination of best practices, is what we have to do. So that's what we're doing.
Great. So switching to other programs, undergraduate and graduate programs, many of our programs in Sargent are high touch, PT, AT, BU Physical Therapy Center, the Gross Human Anatomy Lab. What happened back in March when you found out that students weren't coming back from spring break? How did we transition these high touch programs with, clinical education, BU Physical Therapy Center? What happened to the Gross Human Anatomy Lab?
Right. Yeah, this is amazing. So, we have incredible faculty at Sargent. I wanted to show you one of those. Responses. Let me share my screen here. Hold on just a second. Let me show you this picture. This is a photo of, are you seeing that?
No, not yet.
I believe I am doing that. Oh. Well, okay, try again. Now?
There.
Okay. So this was so one of the biggest challenges, as you can imagine. We have a very important, very popular, very effective course in gross anatomy, which you asked about. And actually, one of the questions we received in advance was about this course, which is what made me bring up this picture. So let me take a moment to encourage people to type questions in on the Q&A. You have a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window, so we'll be monitoring that. But one of the questions we got in advance was what's happening in the gross anatomy lab. So this is one of the things that our Metcalf Prize winning instructor, the university's annual teaching award, went to Elizabeth Coe a few years ago. So Liz is our gross anatomy instructor. When her lab was, or gross anatomy labs were forced to go remote, I mean, that presents an incredible challenge. Well, this is what she did. She ordered up hundreds of boxes of bones. So each box here is a set of bones ready to be shipped out to her students. These were, picked up at the college's expense, and we've continued to do this through the summer and the current semester. So all of our students that are taking gross anatomy are each working with their own set of bones. So that was one of our responses. But the challenges were many. How do you do clinical skills training, for example? I mean, how does a PT train a student to do certain treatments without being able to touch that student? So that has presented, obviously, a very high challenge. I'll just indicate, first of all, the success we've had in meeting that challenge by noting that not a single student at Sargent has been delayed in achieving their academic targets because of because of COVID-19 for COVID-19 reasons. So all of the PTs got the clinical skills training they needed and graduated on time. As long as there are always students who do have, academic challenges. Those are unrelated to COVID-19. So we've succeeded in doing this. Now, if you walked into a PT, the PT training lab in the basement, which many people on this call are familiar with, I'm sure, that lab, you would barely recognize a lot of the activity. Everyone there is in personal protective equipment, full gowns, shields, face masks, gloves. But that's what it takes. That kind of personal protective equipment is what it takes to be able to do these kinds of clinical skills on each other, which is necessary. And being able to use that training lab is an absolutely essential part of their instructional program. So, those have been some of the toughest. You can imagine in the speech language pathology clinic, that's also very tough. A lot of those, well, so here's some of the silver lining of the pandemic, which is surprising. I mean, many tragedies and horrors that really can't go unacknowledged, but at the same time, there have been some remarkably positive and surprisingly positive things. One is that we have dreamt about telemedicine and the potential of telemedicine, telehealth, the remote treatment for years. That was always a big dream. I also worked at the VA, and in VA, that was a big program, was trying to get that thing off the ground. And it was like the Hindenburg. We could just not get that thing. Well, actually, the Hindenburg did get off the ground. Didn't work out as well. So I gotta wind that back in. But trying to get that thing going was really tough. Well, COVID-19 provided the impetus we needed to really make a commitment, make an investment in the training, in the equipment, the technology, and in the governmental allowance for people to practice across state lines and remotely, so that our SLP students were able to provide treatment remotely. Our BU Physical Therapy Center, the Ryan Center, incredibly, you have to ask yourself now, what happens to a physical therapy center in a pandemic? If you drive past your neighborhood physical therapy center, I'm sure you can probably see that it's boarded up, or at least the closed sign is on the door. In many cases, at least it was through the summer. They're certainly opening up now. But the BU Physical Therapy Center barely closed, went remote immediately, and kept the patient load at 25% of normal. And that 25% doesn't sound like very much, but in a pandemic, it's incredible. And for physical therapy, where you'd think it would drop to zero, it didn't. It dropped to 25%. And really, enormous credit to our highly skilled clinicians who were able to transition were able to keep their patients comfortable and committed with this new process, and who were able to take advantage of new governmental guidance and allowances, regulations, policies that permitted these adjustments right away. So lots and lots of pivoting, very, very rapid accommodation, and many, many successes. I mean, we work with incredible people at Sargent, and what they're able to do in the face of challenges like this is just, it's just awe-inspiring.
We're very lucky as alums and as faculty. So college life now, college life back on the Charles River campus. What's the experience like now for our undergraduate and graduate students?
So the reports vary. I think what I see on the national news is very different from what I'm experiencing on the BU campus. So what makes national news is basement parties. And I mean, I was just reading about a big basement party that some high school kids were having, and then, well, that's a long story. That's not happening here. The students are in on this, they're in this with us. They're being tested twice a week. If they are on campus without a mask, they're going to get a gentle reminder from the first person that they go by. I mean, everybody's in this together. This is like no judgment. This is just like, we're in a, all hands on deck, all masks on your face, including your nose, condition. And people are not shy about it. I mean, it's amazing to see. I walk around campus, I can be out for a long time before I see anyone without a mask. Everybody knows these numbers. So another screen I wanted to share with you. Let me bring this up. One of the things that BU is doing is just being incredibly transparent about this whole process. Like, yes, we're doing a lot of testing. Well, what is that testing showing us? This is on the open web, so this isn't BU only information. We share this with the world. There are plenty of research projects being done now that are collecting these data from every university that's making it available. BU has been testing. This is called the BU COVID-19 testing data dashboard. This is the result. This is reflecting the results of our surveillance testing. So this is first. What you see is just the number of tests a week, running about 4,000 tests a day. So it's an incredible number of tests. It required establishing our own testing facility. We now have our own COVID-19 test lab that relies on the services of 8 robots. We hired a complete staff to run this. We have, I don't know, is it 6 testing centers? We all go get tested. I'm sure you have exactly the same experience. You have an appointment at 9:35, you go in the door, you're out of there by 9:36, and you've had the swab in your nose, drop it off, and you're back out the door, and everything done just with exquisite precision and attention to safety and to the reliability of the testing. So you have complete faith in these numbers. So some interesting numbers here. Cumulative tests from July 27, almost 140,000 tests. Of those, 99.92% test negative, only 108 positive tests. So you run 140,000 tests to get 108 positives. That's incredible. With about a day turnaround, it takes about 26.9 hours to provide that email back to the student, faculty, or staff member and report back that result. So what's important to know about this is those 108 positive tests now would have, those are potential, each one is a potential hotspot. So that's 108 potential hotspots that have been caught and stopped sort of, at the earliest possible point. Here's the day-to-day numbers. Three positive tests this day. Our big day was when we had 9 back in late August, early September. We had several days recently that we're at 0 here before September 20th. We popped back up to 2, but the numbers are just incredibly low now. So we are maintaining a very, very low state of disease presence in our community. So, it's just important to know that, this is a safe place to be. And I think that is key to informing the student experience. The student experience is, this is a place where I'm safe. I'm here to learn. I'm here to first attend to my safety. And then I'm next here to learn in the way that is most effective for me, whether that's remote or that is in person, and whether that varies from one day to the next, from one class to the next, from one class activity to the next. That's how it's going to be. That's how it's going to be addressed. So, so far so good. The models for COVID spread nationally are a little bit scary at the moment. But I feel incredibly confident in what is happening at the BU level and in what our students, faculty, and staff are doing in response to this challenge.
Yes, and to add to that, being in the classroom, there is a custodian before I go in to teach that is sanitizing every touch surface that somebody could have possibly touched. It is being sprayed down. There's Purell wipes before you walk into any room. You take some, you wipe down your own surface before you come in. There's hand sanitizer at every podium. There's hand sanitizer at every entrance, every exit. And students have been phenomenal about wiping down their surfaces before, after. And, the university really has gone above and beyond with providing us with cleaning materials and hand sanitizer, keeping us safe. So challenges. What challenges have you faced as our dean when it comes to students, faculty, alumni, faculty, staff?
So that's an interesting question. There are a lot of personal challenges. Like, I really miss getting out there. I really thrive on seeing our alumni. We have amazing people out there. I know some of my, dearest friends are on this call, and I miss seeing you all. So that's tough, actually. I love those times, and I miss that. I mean, I'm in my apartment, me and Ben, it's me and Ben. So, the personal challenges are not small. So the challenges with research, keeping research going, those are very significant challenges. The financial challenges have been very substantial. Starting a new diagnostic lab facility that can do 35,000 tests a week is not a small proposition. So managing managing the college budget adjustments has been a challenge. One of the biggest challenges is the things that we're not getting done. We're trying to do everything, but man, this is an incredibly creative community. Every time I meet with someone, it's just ideas. And one of the things that I really feel struck by is sort of those lost opportunities, the opportunity cost, the things that we can't do because, it takes a lot of time to manage COVID or COVID response. And that's true for everyone. So all of the human potential that is being directed or diverted into our COVID-19 response is tough to look at, so that might be the biggest challenge. The challenges to individuals are incredibly substantial. Many of our students, especially, interestingly, graduate students are a very, very vulnerable group in many ways. Those graduate students, in the majority of cases, have become independent, maybe financially independent, at least financially less dependent on others, parents usually, and but at the same time, there are fewer resources available for them. So there was the CARES Act, which was a fantastic response that helped many of our undergraduates, but our graduate students weren't eligible for it. So the Sargent community responded to the needs of our large, as you mentioned, more than 600 graduate students in our number 1 OTD program, in our number 10 DPT number 10 SLP program, in our number 20 DPT program, in our excellent nutrition and MSAT programs. I mean, we have really excellent students who, through no fault of their own, and despite their careful planning and careful budget management, are now suddenly knocked for a loop, with some of them looking at having to leave school altogether. So some of our leaders in our Sargent community, including members of our advisory board and others, created this Sargent Cares Fund that has gone to now more than, I think we're close to 25 students who we've been able to provide substantial financial support to in many cases, to help them with housing and transportation and basic needs. I mean, these are really, really challenging times for everyone, and particularly for graduate students, who don't have time to work full time and study full time in some of the toughest programs in the country. So, those are some of the challenges that I spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, they're very real. In the last couple minutes that we have before we go to our question and answer, do you want to talk a minute about just some of the recent accomplishments of Sargent College? I know you talked about the rankings of our PT program, OT program, speech language hearing sciences. What are some of the other accomplishments?
It's a great question, because the accomplishments of Sargent are this. When I look back at the past decade, or whatever want to measure, it's been a steady climb. Our rankings of our professional programs continue to strengthen. Our undergraduate programs, the health science program, which is our undergraduate program that you work in, and that program is now the 4th largest undergraduate major at BU. I mean, little Sargent, now hosts one of the largest undergraduate programs. So again, this is another sort of silver lining of the pandemic, is that those students don't have any trouble in Dr. O'Keefe's epidemiology class this semester. They have the lived experience. They don't have to study transmissibility. They hear it on the evening news. They see it on their phone, every 20 seconds. So, there are, like the telehealth, response. I mean, this response, this opportunity for students has been kind of amazing. So anyway, the increase in external funding, it's absolutely a credit to our faculty. It's also a credit to BU, because there's long-term planning that goes into faculty growth, into faculty hiring. I think, people don't often take that kind of a picture of the lifespan of a university, or the, sort of the operations of a university, to see how long it takes to support a faculty member's success. You hire the best and the brightest star that you can attract, to to your institution, and then you just support and support and support that person's potential. And you watch that and nurture that growth through the years, and pretty soon you have, as we have, a presidential early career in science and engineering, early career award, and so called a PCASE award, a national award awarded by a presidential commission. Well, Kara Stepp is a PCASE winner this year. So it's just an incredible accomplishment for the college, for the university, to attract and support faculty members, academic researchers of that stature. So those things, that's where you see the growth of the college, the accomplishments of the college, is in these, these things that you work so long to build. And then you pass these little mile markers now and then, another $1 million in external funding, another 100 students. I mean, we have another point up in GPA, or class rank, in the students that are coming to Sargent. I mean, all of the indicators are going in the right direction. They just get stronger and stronger, and it seems inconceivable that they can continue to grow the way they do.
We're fortunate to have some of the best and brightest minds as our students, and being taught by the best and brightest minds in our faculty.
Absolutely.
We're very fortunate. So I have a few more questions for you, but I did want to remind people that our question and answer is open at the bottom of your screen. So if there are any questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to type them in. And we will monitor that as we continue our discussion. So another thing, just as an alum, what are your short-term goals for Sargent College? What are your midterm, thinking about a healthcare practitioner, what are your short and long-term goals? So what are your, thinking back to note writing, what are your short, intermediate, and long-term goals for Sargent College? Let's start with short-term.
So, it's an incredibly exciting time to be in higher education, and particularly in healthcare. It seems like it's always easy to say that, but I think, I was talking to the Dean of the School of Public Health, Sandro Galea, and he said something about how important, public health is now. And I said, well, if it wasn't the most important thing before, it is now. I mean, to have a school that's focused on health, to be working with a school that's focused on health, it really is an exciting time right now. To be training the students, the researchers, the academic researchers, the professors, of tomorrow that are going to be providing these kinds of healthcare systems, it's really exciting. So, but there are other things that make this moment in the history of healthcare education, health education, particularly exciting. One is the promise of data science. We've, ever since the first idea of artificial intelligence, was proposed probably 30, 40, 50 years ago, the promise has just sort of hung out there, and our efforts have been, incremental. I think we're on the verge of closing that loop where all of the things you've ever done with all of the practitioners who've ever practiced, maybe within your system, across all of the clinics and all of the different types of patients that you've treated, and all of the procedures, the practices that you've applied. I mean, all of the things that go into the case mix, right? The patient walks in, they bring in with them their sex, their zip code, their income, their education, their parents' education, their physical history, their mental and emotional history. I mean, all of these things go into their case mix, and it just seems overwhelming. Except that with data science, we can capture all of that, and we can use that to inform. Now we've taken all of that and we can inform the next patient, just that one next patient. You know, that's the promise of what the Institute of Medicine called learning health systems. It's unbelievable. I mean, how exciting that could be, where basically every patient now is part of a clinical trial. And everybody knows what clinical trials are now, so that's good. Don't have to talk about that. So that's one thing. But health equity, you know, health inequity has been with us for so long. I mean, health inequities have been with us forever. Health inequities have been around as long as healthcare has been around. Healthcare has never been applied equitably. So it's an incredibly exciting time, especially at Boston University, with the new, several large initiatives dealing with inequities and racist principles, systems, and being able to address health inequities this way is incredibly exciting and a very gratifying thing to be able to put energy into. So that's another. I mean, just a really exciting time. Health systems, like your class, right? So, being able to think about enormous changes in health systems that address data science and inequities and other aspects, interprofessional education. How do you rapidly disseminate laboratory findings out to the general population? How do you get those things out there quickly? We can think about those things now. We certainly have the technical capacity. Maybe what we don't have is the sort of the systems that can support these new instantiations of these new operating principles. So things like that make it just a ridiculously exciting time. It also makes me understand how short the human lifespan is.
Absolutely.
We need a lot longer than the human lifespan really accommodates, maybe, for some of these really exciting changes to happen. But there they are, and we get to work on them, and we get to work with the next generations of researchers and students who are going to carry that work forward. And it's just there can't be a more exciting place to be putting your life energy at the moment.
Absolutely. And we'll have support right next door at the new Data Sciences Center. So for those of you that remember Sargent at 1 University Road, or those of you that remember Sargent at 635, some of us remember a Burger King next to the now Sargent, which was taken down. Some of us have great memories of going over and filling our water cups from their water dispenser during breaks in class. The Burger King was no longer. It was a parking lot until this summer. And we are now in the midst of construction of our new Data Sciences Center, which it came to my attention that faculty will be able to apply for an appointment, a joint appointment in data sciences and Sargent College, which is really exciting for the faculty.
Yeah, there will be a health, so the faculty for computing and data sciences, this new faculty will be built on interest areas, like interest clusters. One of the interest clusters will be health. And we intend to be active participants in that. So yeah, it's just, incredibly exciting, time to be working in these areas.
So long range goals. So we talked about some short-term goals for Sargent College with health equity and data sciences. Long-term vision, 10-year, maybe 10-year vision of Sargent.
Yeah, those are long-term, I'm afraid.
Those are long-term.
Continuing to continue to contribute to the health landscape, what makes Sargent unique is that the professions that we work with, our professions deal with large, long-term sort of challenges to human health that exist at different scales, but none of them are on an acute time frame. So that's one of the big differentiators. So, if you're talking about population health, or if you're talking about physical therapy or speech language pathology, our clinicians deal with people over the long term. It's important to understand who your patient is, what your relationship is building toward, what your shared objective is. That's not going to change. The way we do that will change. It always does. So the things that contribute to that, that overall well-being, the person's capacity, a patient's capacity to participate, right? It was so great that the WHO finally caught up to Dudley Allen Sargent, who had this idea in the 1880s that what we really had to work on was disability and participation, and that the World Health Organization finally caught up, 100 years later, recognizing that impairment and disability aren't the same, and that addressing a person's participation is something that Sargent has been focused on for its entire time of existence. And so we will continue to do that. I can't ever see us straying from that tradition. We're never going to be impairment focused. We are always going to be participation focused and disability focused. And you see the way that people at Sargent embrace interprofessional practice. In many professions, interprofessional practice is seen as sort of another burden, like a requirement. At Sargent, we recognize that gets us to where we want to be, that by collaborating with our colleagues, we can get our patients to where we want them to be faster and better, in a way that's more fulfilling for the patients. And so, that's what the long range future is. And it would be a fool's game, to try and figure out how the professions and disciplines sort of divide all of those things up, and where the demand will be. So, yeah, that's what I got.
That's fab. And just some of your words just so actually bring me back to my background and, sitting in 101 and, reading, a former dean's article, Alan Jetty's article on the disablement model. Just
Right.
bringing back 20 plus years ago, and a lot of things about Sargent have changed, but a lot of things about Sargent haven't changed.
Yeah.
And that core mission never has. And hopefully never will, because it is something that I think as alums we all hold near and dear to our heart. And I do have to say, when you miss, being on campus and seeing people live, one of the things about Dean Moore, he walks to work every day. And you get to see him walking down Comm Ave into Sargent College, and he'll always stop you and say, "How's it going?" And one of the things that I appreciate is you mean it. You're very genuine. You mean it to students, to us, and that warmth and caring and genuineness means a lot to us. So thank you.
Sweet to say that.
I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Dean Moore, I know how incredibly busy you are right now. Thank you for giving us your time to just fill us in on Learn From Anywhere and what life is like in Sargent as a result of COVID-19.
Yeah, well, it's really great to be here. Thank you so much for doing this, Kelly. You did an amazing job and keeping us moving along. It is disappointing not to be able to see everybody. I sure wish I could see all my friends out there in TV land, but technology is not quite there yet. So
I know. So hopefully next year at this time, we will be able to, have another town hall in person and have people, maybe we could all populate 101 next year at this time.
Wouldn't that be great? Oh my gosh, that would be so great.
So thank you very much, everybody. Again, you are in our thoughts. Please stay well. I hope your loved ones are healthy and continue to stay well. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Bye, everybody. Thanks,
Bye.
Kelly.